All right, well, we can get going. We are at 1 o'clock. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining our session, Fireside Chat with Influitive, and our very esteemed customer, Gillian Farquhar from Qlik, who is the head of customer marketing, community, and advocacy. And Gillian, how are you today?
Hi, Dan. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here, and I'm delighted.
Awesome. Well, we're going to get going and get right into it. We don't have slides to prepare. It's a fireside chat, so we're going to ask questions along the way. Please do up here in the session area, and we'd love to know why you're here, what you're trying to get out of it, what questions you want us to address. So please do fire away. Let us know. But Jillian, maybe just talk a little bit about yourself and what is Qlik?
Sure. So Qlik is, I like to say, a 25-year-old startup. We're actually a data company, so we're a B2B software company focused on data and business analytics, as well as integration. We have grown really tremendously over the last decade, in particular by acquisition. So we are based internationally in Sweden, and then our U.S. headquarters are in the Philadelphia area. So, like I said, I consider us a 25-year-old startup in that we are still sort of running really fast, really hungry, but we do have a lot of legacy too. So, some of the things I guess we'll talk about are, how we've tried to modernize our approach to marketing and to community in particular around, with all that legacy sort of infrastructure. I've been with
Well,
Qlik for about 12 years, which is a strange thing to say. I know in this day and age, it's weird
yeah.
for people to be there that long, but it's actually been great. I came into Qlik with a very different role than I have now. And so, if it makes sense, we can talk about that as well.
Yeah, well, what a segue, because I was going to say, not many people come out of college, with a advocacy or customer marketing
Yeah,
degree. I think that that's all changing. There's a lot of attention and importance around customer marketing nowadays. But
sure.
where did you start from, and how did you end up in this role that you're in?
Oh, it's such a great, I appreciate the question. I'll actually just tell you one truth that I originally went to college for musical theater. So now this was long before there was anything considering, community advocacy, etc. So I went to school for musical theater, and my parents found out and quickly yanked me out of that. They weren't going to pay for that. So luckily, I ended up at the Newhouse School at Syracuse for communications, and they had some great marketing programs. But I think I started my career like many of us do, which is, I was a marketing broadcast major. I just needed a job in my field, relatively speaking. I think when you are a decent presenter, a decent writer, there are lots of open spots for you. And like many of us, I sort of fell into the marketing general category. And for me, that was PR. So I really came up through public relations and on the agency side. And I started my corporate career eventually at Red Hat, where I ran communications for not that long, quite
Mhm.
honestly, and then off at another company. So when I ended up at Qlik, it was 2009 in the middle of a recession. And I'll be honest, I needed a job. My company had folded, exploded basically, and so I needed a job. But my journey at Qlik, getting towards customer marketing, advocacy, and community, those are all things that did not exist. They didn't exist 10 years ago, and in fact, they at so many very large enterprises today, they still don't exist. So I think it's a really exciting part of marketing to be part of, and there are a lot of trailblazers out there. I humbly follow many of those.
Good background. You know, it's your title has three different elements in it:
Yeah.
advocacy, community, customer marketing. I
Mhm.
think the worlds you can throw in engagement and loyalty. All of this is colliding, don't you think?
Yeah.
And how is that changing the dynamics? How is that changing your role inside a Qlik and the evolution of your program?
I mean, everything's changing. The way I talk about it or think about it is users of anything or consumers of anything have a baseline expectation of certain experience with the brands that they buy from or work with. And if you think about Amazon or Spotify or they've created this sort of frictionless experience. And even though I work for a B2B software company, our customers, our users expect some level of, I think they expect a baseline level of personalization and understanding and knowledge and experience. So advocacy, community, marketing for B2B companies has changed dramatically because of the blurring, I think, between B2C and B2B approaches. And so there isn't, B2B used to be just, look at the funnel, formulaic marketing, stuff the funnel, and then you'll get the leads you need to, eventually come out with the right equation. And I think it's very different today. Our, users in the world and consumers are savvy. And so you have to be able to not market to them, but hopefully create experiences that associate your brand or your product with those connections. And I think community is a great way to do that. The idea of co-creation in the advocacy realm is a great way to do that. So I think it is the most exciting part of marketing right now, and a great place to really, try to build your roots and break out. So I think, again, to summarize, the expectations of any consumer, whether it's B2B, B2C, B2Z, people have an expectation of experience, and any company that can meet those, whether it's communities or whether it's programs that personalize experiences, those are really important. And that is what we're trying to build at Qlik.
Well, you mentioned experiences, and there's no doubt customers that are prospects first, that going through journeys. You can't control the path that they take. It's all different ways. You can influence that path by creating great experiences and customized, personalized journeys. How do you do that at Qlik, though? I know you run a couple of different programs. You have a community.
Yes.
How do you orchestrate all this with customers in each of these hubs or each of these community sites?
Great question. I would say that we started with Influitive. Influitive years ago, before many folks were fully on board with whatever advocate marketing was or whatever community building was. I had a great lunch with someone who worked at Influitive, and she really explained this cool concept to me. And so the first thing we had to do to build our programs was to prove that this was a worthy way to invest and that we could get the responses we were hoping for out of our customer community. So I would say I started with something very focused, which was, at the time, it's called Qlik Nation, by the way, our Influitive hub. It houses about 3,600 of our users. So it's a small-ish, hopefully growing more. But when we started, we were much smaller. It was probably 100 at maximum users. And so we started there, and I had to prove and sort of pitch and repitch the concept of building an actual community with our CMO, because there was no understanding, no thought at that point as to what that would mean. And so once we had proven that, and it was, a year or two before really people were like, oh, this is really fueling a lot of our work. It's fueling all of our product reviews. It's fueling all of our testimonials. It's fueling all of our, personalized campaigns. And until that point, we really, we had to prove ourselves. And so from there, once we did that, I think it got easier for us to not just invest more in Influitive and sort of buy into the model that customer communities they're not optional anymore at all. I mean, it doesn't matter what you think. They're not optional. I think they have to be included in your strategy. So for us, we used Influitive as a way to prove that. Today, we do have a very large user community that is based on our technical and support channels. So all of our support actually goes through Qlik Community, which is about 127,000 customers. So that's quite large, but we didn't start there. We started with Influitive. We started small, focused, ROI centric, and proved ourselves. And just, customer marketing did not exist at Qlik. We had to build it.
Well, thank you for choosing Influitive. And, technology and platform aside, you touched on something that is a burning question for everybody on this call and everybody that I talk to and we talk to, whether you're trying to establish an advocacy program, or you already you have one underway and you're trying to grow it. how do you justify to the CMO, if you don't have the program in place, to spend here? Because you're vying for dollars out of that total marketing budget.
Sure.
So much of it is on the front end of the top
Yes.
of the funnel. How do you justify saying, we need to carve money out for a post-sale journey and program?
Well, I mean, it's pretty basic, but it's not really successful in a lot of cases, specifically because marketing does have this sort of skewed investment model, right? Where you're investing, like, I'm making this up, but maybe 80% of your marketing, campaign budget is going into
That's
your
true.
funnel or
Yes,
your land, right? And but yet your users, your customers are spending their entire time with your company post sale. So it is a tricky thing, and it can be prickly and political, to get folks to come around to that, because there's, marketing is a craft in a lot of ways. And so it's been perfected, these calculations, these formulaic approaches, which are great, by the way, and work really well on that side. But from a post sale perspective, my recommendation is to educate yourself and your teams about what post sale experience means from a revenue perspective. And there is a lot of great research out there where you can actually predict your upsell, predict your renewals, predict within a much more accurate lens with a real formulaic approach to the post sale part. And so that would be your adopt part, your expand, and then your renew, right? Just to make it phased if you want. But I do think it requires a risk tolerant leadership at your company. And they probably won't start there. They probably will be like, no. But I think it's not like it's completely new at this point. It's being talked about by analyst firms. One, I think, is really great if you need some sort of data and some stats to fall back on, is Forrester research. Laura Ramos over there
yep.
is incredible. And I would say she's a real thought leader. She understands where marketing, communities, advocacy are going. I personally have used stats and a lot of Laura's thinking to make my case at Qlik for investing more, and quite honestly rebalancing marketing investments for the post sale as opposed to just loading them up for the land phase.
Totally agree with you. We actually just worked with Laura a couple of months back to do a report around post-sale journey and how it drives business value and growth. So
Yep.
lots of good stuff in there, and she's just a fantastic resource.
She
And
is.
she
She really is.
moves it out there straight. She's not. She's
Yeah.
awesome to work with.
She is awesome. And by the way, I would say this for anyone in marketing or on the community side, that's, this is the time. I'm going to sound a little bit like a, inspirational video or something, but I really feel like, these functions, community, post sale experience is coming into its own. And now is the time to make your case and get your boss focused on it, or get your CMO focused on it. And I can tell you personally right now, I am going through the process of pitching a completely new organization at Qlik that is a growth, hopefully, of my own, that I run today, that specifically maps out the post-sale journey in a much more programmatic but experiential way. So I'll keep you posted.
Quite a tease, and that's fantastic.
Well, who knows how it's going to end up, but may as well go for it.
Well, I think I would wager a guess that the key to your success, and you correct me if I'm wrong, is aligning the goals of your program and what it can support by the goals of other departments. So distributing and understanding how you can contribute to their success is an easy way to get the politics out of the way and get engagement at multiple levels.
Yeah, I mean, sure. Anytime you're sort of trying to change the paradigm to anything, you need to make sure you're pulled along by organizations that have much longer histories than maybe yours does. In my case, we have to be tied, so closely to sales and so closely to customer success. At Qlik, customer success owns all of support, all of our, renewals. They really own the experience from a product and technology perspective, whereas marketing, I'm advocating, should own it from an experiential brand perspective. So yes, sales and customer success, and of course, finance from our perspective, operations. All of these folks require, you have to have buy-in. And that's why, your C-level folks are so important at this stage, because without a real transformation, you stay a very siloed type of organization. And by the way, no shame on that. You can be incrementally, I feel like at Qlik, before we were sort of accepted, company wide, we made real differences incrementally to our customers' experiences and to our advocacy, and to rebuilding our community completely from the ground up. So I'm not poo-pooing being a small organization that has yet to expand. I'm actually saying you can make incremental improvements that are really, really important for your company. They just may not see it at the high level yet.
I love the point you made earlier about community is no longer an option,
Yes.
and is so true. And Mr. Spinks and everybody here at CMX is certainly echoing that everywhere they can, as they should.
Sure.
I want to get your point on this around the community and the relationship building, and give some advice to the audience. If sometimes I shiver thinking that people think customer advocacy programs are all about just making requests to customers and then getting stuff from them, and that is probably the fastest way to turn off an advocate. So what advice do you give people around that?
Wow, what a great question. I mean, first of all, I think you have to agree on a philosophy. Um, the philosophy that I try to bring to Qlik, whether or not it pays off right away or not, is sort of irrelevant. I believe that anytime you can create an experience, put people, build a community that allows your users, your customers to come together on their own so that they can co-create with you, um, that benefits your company far more than doing a transactional, would you do this? Would you do this? Would you do this? Ultimately, this is why communities are not, in my opinion, optional. It isn't supposed to be another, website where you put all your wares out there to be, shown and buffed and polished. It's supposed to be, at least the way we envision it at Qlik, and the way I try to pull it through, is an authentic way for your users to find each other, because ultimately they're actually, in our case, they're the experts on our technology. They really are the experts. They do things with our technology that we're like, wow, it didn't occur to us that you could do that. And I'm probably putting my foot in my mouth a little bit there, but I do believe that thinking transactionally about your users with regard to relationships is a mistake. Ultimately, you want, I think, to create as many opportunities as you can to connect them to each other, and you get the benefits of that. You're the association. You're building a place for them to share ideas, share their work, safely challenge us, safely innovate together. I think those things have done more for our advocacy and our community building at Qlik than anything transactional. And not that, again, I think the transactional parts are important too. And you're going to have plenty of users who are interested in doing something to get points and doing something to get a piece of swag. And there's nothing wrong with that. Reciprocity is great. But the larger view, I think, of reciprocity is that if we're building this big community, I'm not going to try to control the people in it. I'm going to try to expose as much of our engineering process, as much of our our thinking, so that they can be in it with us. And that idea of co-creation is something I really believe in. And I think that's why communities are they are the future of marketing. They are the future of customer support, customer success, and probably much more.
How are you using your programs to do that co-creation on the product side? Do you have product feedback, product
Yes.
ideas?
Yeah.
How are customers engaging with you?
It's imperfect because uh, there should always be a way for customers, for users to feel like they can share their ideas. But you need to sort of provide lots of different ways. We do provide an ideation process. It's pretty sophisticated. It's built into our community under the covers. Obviously, that's gated. So if you're a Qlik customer, you can access it, or a Qlik partner, you can access it. But folks that come in anonymously or whatnot cannot. So I would say those are important. You have to make sure, obviously, on the back end, you actually have people reading those every day and interacting. Otherwise, there's no point. But I would say it's just one approach, right? Having ideation and having it available and hopefully transparent to your user base, I think is really important. It's not always possible because you don't always have the staff behind it to be like, yeah, we can do that, or no, we can't do that. We don't have the resources for this. You have to make sure before you do it, I think, that there's a closed loop to it. But I do think community provides that opportunity for you. But I would say anytime you have a customer interaction, email, phone call, coffee, and you get feedback from them, it's your job to ideate on their behalf inside the company.
Well, it's my job to actually look at the Q&A here, and I see a
Oh,
question from Tamimi, which is right in line with the community. How do you manage the difference between developer community and customer community? And there may be other types of communities.
yeah, such a great question. Gosh, I wish I could say that we're great at both. I think Qlik has a lot of room to grow on the developer side. And that for us is because our developer strategy has changed a few times over the last few years. And so without sort of a consistent strategy for us, we just have to do better there. But yes, we do think, well, let me back up for a moment. Any user of our technology is a customer to my team. We literally do not differentiate between a developer or a customer, a paying customer in any way, in the way we think about them. Obviously, in the information that they could find useful or the information that we would find useful from them, there is a difference. So we do treat those audiences differently, but we first think of them both as customers. Influitive actually makes it pretty easy to have groups. So for us, we have everyone in one community. Qlik Nation is everything. And so we have a developer sort of hub within our Qlik Nation, which is broadly a customer only hub. So it does enable you to do that. I think there are lots of ways to take those audiences and bring them together. And then from a content perspective, sometimes they need to be separated. But for us at Qlik, we probably have to make some improvements. Well, I know we have to make some improvements in that area, and we are focused on that.
Great. I understand that within Qlik Nation, there's a smaller group called Qlik Luminaries. Can you just describe what that's all about?
Yeah, thank you. So Qlik Luminary is, if you think about sort of the top advocate programs, maybe at your companies, that's what Qlik Luminary is. So there's 50 of them. They are customers only, and they are global. So some of our largest, most influential customers, and frankly, some of our most innovative that are much smaller, these are individuals that are recognized for their commitment to Qlik, their understanding of our vision, and frankly, their support and their public advocacy of that. And so within Influitive, within Qlik Nation, we have a special hub just for them. So it provides them with opportunities that other customers within the hub may not get access to, like early access programs, special access to executives, the ability to schedule other briefings through the platform, et cetera. But it's our top advocacy program. And so I think with a good mix of how to approach those programs is to give them a special spot in your hub, or create a space for them in your community, but also have a very high touch staffed program in addition to that. I don't think very, very high touch programs like that can be completely automated.
I totally agree with you there. In a perfect world, every customer is a loyal advocate and a raving fan of yours. And we know that's not the case.
Right.
In fact, someone could be a very loyal advocate and then become a detractor because of a user or customer experience over time.
Right.
So it is very much a journey. And so how does Gillian engage with customers to hopefully steer them to advocacy and want to be an advocate? What content do you put in front of them? What are the signs that you see that say this is a potential advocate or not?
It's a great point. You can see, it's interesting as I've been sort of prepping to do this whole pitch within Qlik for this new organization. One of the things that became abundantly clear was that you can have a detractor and an advocate. You can have a advocate who's not renewing. You can have, there's all sorts of combinations. And so NPS is probably not the only way to measure those things. In general, what we look for in someone who might be wanting to go down the path of advocacy, first of all, we don't call them advocates because nobody wants to feel like they're a yes man or woman for a brand, in my opinion. But we certainly, those that engage with us on social media is a great indicator. Even if they come in as having had a bad experience, which we've had. Once they've identified themselves to Qlik as someone who cared enough, whatever their feelings about, to raise their hand on social media or raise their hand, by sending an email, those are folks that we can work with personally. And anytime that you can create an experience between a person and another person, you have the potential to expand that. I've always found that our best advocates don't actually know that they want to be advocates or that they're even interested in doing anything like that until they get engaged with some of the people and they're like, okay, I really like the way clickies think. So at Qlik, we're all called clickies. And so once they experience some of the clicky culture, it's very quick. And we find also, another little plug for Influitive, I'll just say this. Influitive allows us to, at scale, identify advocates who didn't know they wanted to be advocates and have them participate in a way that works for them, because we're not pushing anything to them. It's completely at their speed, at their time. And they identify themselves as advocates early on. Some of our top luminaries actually came out of and are still very active within the Qlik Nation community, actually.
It's a great point, and our CEO always talks about, there's all forms of advocacy and negative advocacy from your detractors. They're advocating for you to improve your product or service. And if you do right by them and listen to them and take action, they are the fastest way to convert into an advocate.
Certainly.
It's the people in the middle that don't give any feedback or any interest, or you have no idea what they're going to do.
Yeah.
It's the detractors, and on the spectrum, the other end is what drives that.
Yeah, for sure.
So one last question. It's all, in the marketing, in the digital world, it's all about data. It's all about metrics. What are the metrics that matter to Gillian in customer marketing, advocacy, community? How do you know it's working?
Well, this is a question I have to answer frequently for our executives. I'm my boss, or the CMO. So it varies depending on I sort of separate them into pillars. My organization has 3 primary pillars: community, advocacy, and customer marketing, sort of traditional customer marketing. They all, of course, are related to each other. I would say this, from an advocacy perspective, every act of advocacy is not equal. For us, we prioritize things like customer testimonials, like a user saying, Qlik does this better than whoever. We prioritize product reviews because we know for us, peer reviews, that is where the selling happens these days. You don't get shortlisted because you're not high up on a particular, peer review site. Well, we're not involved in those conversations. We want to make sure that happy customers are out there, ideally. So we prioritize that. And we prioritize references to other prospects. So for us, advocacy, measuring those 3 things, and I'm oversimplifying just for the purposes of the time that we have, but those are 3 things we look at really closely. On the community only side, I would say this. I think I said earlier, we had 127,000 customers on our community. Great. But it's kind of meaningless unless you know who's engaged, what they're doing, are they getting what they need? So our measures are actually how many active users do we have day to day? How many concurrent users? What is their view of what they're getting out of Qlik community? And, whether or not it's helping them do what they need to do in their business. So, those are measures that are, very different. But we report to those every week, every month, every quarter, and certainly every year.
Love that advice. Love those metrics. We have time for one more thing. What is the one piece of advice you would give our audience around starting an advocacy program, or taking the path that you're taking and expanding it?
Oh gosh, I would just say ask for the job. If you're in a company where maybe they don't prioritize this yet, and you're passionate about it, and the one thing I did in my career, I didn't obviously start out with this role and this function. It didn't exist. I asked for the job. I made it clear essentially that I wanted to do this, that I believed in it. I had a lot of backup to say this is why it's important for our business. So my advice would be, if you're really passionate and you believe you can make a difference in your business, ask for the opportunity.
What a great way to end. Gillian, thank you so much for your time and your
Thank
wisdom.
you. It was a real pleasure.
Enjoy the rest of the show, everyone.
Take care.
Bye-bye.